We're delighted to have two speakers from the class of 2023. The first speaker is Kelly Kim. Kelly learned Mandarin, Spanish, and French, minored in modern languages, and completed a coterminal master's in communications. She was inducted into the National Political Science and Spanish Honor Societies, received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, and graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa. She was a research assistant at the Stanford Cyber Policy Center and Stanford Law School, and a teaching assistant for Dr. Rakov in one of our core history classes, as well as being an IR peer advisor. Kelly will work at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in DC and plans to pursue a career at the intersection of foreign policy, law, and diplomacy. Kelly?
Thank you, Professor Schultz, for the gracious introduction. Professor Ziegard's speech is definitely a tough act to follow, but I'm going to channel my own riz and get through the speech. So, here we go. My great-grandfather taught illiterate Korean farmers how to read and write at great risk under the Japanese imperial regime. My uncle and father led protests against an oppressive government to demand affordable and accessible education for all Korean citizens. These family stories impressed upon me from a very young age the power of words and the power of using one's voice to contribute to a more just society. Throughout middle and high school, I read and reread Secretary Madeleine Albright's memoir, Madam Secretary, hoping that I too would one day be able to use my voice to contribute to change, just as my family members had did. The first class I ever took at Stanford was The Spirit of Democracy. There, I learned about the complexities of democratic development and the intricacies that average citizens take in order to protect it. And I learned that from my family as well. The following quarter, in my freshman year power class, I wrote about how ethnic minority populations, such as the Uyghur Muslims in China, use linguistic methods of resistance to circumvent Chinese state-sponsored censorship and fight against a regime that is genocidal. This later became the topic of my master's thesis. That summer, I carried this interest in grassroots resistance and international justice onto an internship at the Department of Justice, where I worked with prosecutors and historians to bring perpetrators of genocide and crimes against humanity to justice. Most of the time, it was thinking about litigation methods and trying to get these international criminals on American soil. At that point, I knew all my passions clearly pointed to one major, IR. And in fact, it was almost automatic. I knew that no other major would equip me with the incredibly complex tools needed to succeed in this difficult world and would allow me to learn interdisciplinary thinking, multifaceted analysis, and of course, innovative and comprehensive dialogue. But more importantly, I'd like to think that I was drawn to IR because it would teach me to put my passion into concrete action, something that our world needs more of. So whether it was analyzing the decision-making processes of American presidents with Dr. Rakov, or examining the merits of the right to protect with, of course, Dr. Pat Nod, every IR class I took taught me to apply historical knowledge and international political knowledge to modern issues. Close mentorship from former diplomats and politicians at the Freeman Spogli Institute taught me the importance and the value of public service. And glimpses of what it was like to influence policy, both at the State Department and think tanks like the Brookings Institution, taught me that change can be made at the governmental and the institutional level, although at times it may be difficult, as Hal Weiler said in The Diplomat. And as I continued my studies in Chinese and Spanish, I learned one important lesson, and that was that movements for change are fundamentally grounded in values that transcend beyond cultural boundaries and geopolitical borders. Change comes from citizens. It doesn't come from concepts or geopolitics or anything beyond that. The last 4 years for many of us have been the most exciting and the most exhilarating, but they've also come with great challenges. From the war on Ukraine to ongoing genocides in Burma and Myanmar, anti-democratic challenges in Azerbaijan, Cambodia, and the United States as well, armed conflict in Sudan, Ethiopia, and Syria. Discussions of international politics over the last 4 years have been grim. But it is in times like these that I am reminded why my friends and my wonderful peers here and I decided to declare IR. It has permanently altered our view of the world and for the better. It is precisely what has taught us to address very complex global issues with an open mind, with a fervor to contribute to a just society, and with the willingness to contribute to innovative dialogue and comprehensive discussion. As we become the next generation of diplomats, policymakers, and scholars responsible for shaping the future that we will live in, I hope we can ground ourselves in the values of social justice, care, diplomacy, conversation, and innovation that we've learned at Stanford and truly use it to fight for the principles we believe in. And with that, thank you and congratulations to the class of 2023.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for those remarks. Our second speaker is Sarah Lee. Sarah learned Spanish and minored in human rights. She was inducted into the National Political Science Honor Society, received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law with distinction. She was a research assistant at the Global Digital Policy Incubator and interned with Freedom House and the Center for Civilians in Conflict. Sarah will work as a full-time speechwriter at West Wing Writers in New York City, and in the future would like to pursue human rights advocacy through law and storytelling. Sarah?
Welcome all. I wish a universe of congratulations and gratitude to the Stanford International Relations class of 2023, and to the family members, friends, ancestors, educators, mentors, and campus workers who have made our achievement possible. As IR students, we had the privilege of studying the world and its 8 billion people and nearly 200 countries and over 7,000 languages and ways of living, governing, and being. It is a gift to have shared this global curiosity with all of you, no less from the cultural capital of the world, Palo Alto. But in all seriousness, to graduate with you all today is an honor and a joy. But in the back of my mind, I'm incredibly scared. We're so young. We can do so much. We can become so much. When grappling with all of these anxieties, I've been thinking a lot about the words of a courageous woman. Her name is Chanel Miller. I think about the reminder she leaves us with at the end of her memoir. Stay tender with your power. I think tenderness is underrated. Somewhere along the way, the world tries to trick tenderness out of us. It tries to tell us that if you want to lead or succeed, you've got to be strategic and cold, unrelenting or stoic. But tenderness grounds who we are, and I think it's what our world desperately needs more of. I'm a firm believer that at the core of tenderness is a profound understanding of humanity in everyone, in your parents, in your friends, in people you agree with, and people you don't agree with, and people who live just down the hall, and people you have not yet met. We are tender when we listen. We are tender when we acknowledge the limits of our own understanding. We are tender when we sit with our own fears, vulnerabilities, and insecurities and let them serve as a source of growth, a place for a new beginning. On this very campus, I have felt tenderness in its truest of forms, in the friends I cherish, the ones who have held me and whom I have held through anxiety attacks, heartbreaks, the passing of loved ones. I have found it in every shared song, article, or poem sent with a message. I thought of you. I think you might like this. I feel it embodied in my existence from the sacrifices made across generations in my family, just as they have been made in each of yours. Tenderness is a feeling of closeness. togetherness. Tenderness has always found a way to survive in our world. It's how we survive in our world. It was there when former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern banned assault-style weapons after the Christchurch shooting. It was imbued in every story of apartheid courageously shared during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. It's tucked into every protest, every call for change, every reminder that the world can be, should be, better. When Iranian women and girls stand in defiance of the hijab law and morality police, when the people of Myanmar refuse to give up on their democracy after the military coup, when indigenous environmental defenders across the world fight to protect this sacred earth from those destroying it, there's irrevocable, indelible tenderness, closeness, togetherness. Today, as we move forward as Stanford graduates, I ask you to stay tender with your power. A Stanford education is power in its own right, privilege granted by an institution built upon the disempowerment of those it deemed other. Sometimes it feels just so wrong to hold all this power. But today, we do. And tomorrow, we get to choose what we do with it. So whether you become a diplomat or a data scientist, a journalist or an activist, a teacher or an entrepreneur, invite tenderness into the change you hope to make. Welcome it into every interaction, every conversation, every shared vision of how this world could be so much different. Though we may be leaving our IR classrooms, there's a perpetual beauty in listening, learning, and understanding how others move through this world and the stories they believe in. Challenge yourself and others to make meaning of where our differences lie, but to also revel in our shared humanity and knowing that we are all made of the same stardust. Finally, I want to remind you that as you set your table of tenderness for your peers, your loved ones, and the entire world, remember to set a place for yourself. Prime Minister Ardern accomplished so much during her time in office, but to me, her bravest moment was when she chose to take a step back and breathe. It is an act of courage to be kind to yourself. I hope you never forget this. Wherever you go, whatever choices you make, you are invaluable, you are loved, you are worthy of tenderness in every form, every lifetime, every parallel universe. To the Stanford International Relations class of 2023, I am so grateful and hopeful and utterly in awe of each of you. I hope we spend our entire lives learning, whether together or apart. I hope we find joy in all the things we do not know and in all the selves we may be. And through it all, I hope we stay tender with our power. Thank you.